Chapter 15. Cian O'Callaghan. The streets of Swindon seemed ordinary on that late night, filled with weekend sounds and bright neon lights. People were moving between bars, clubs, and taxis, each person caught up in their own plans. But inside one particular nightclub, a young woman named Cian was finishing her evening out with friends. She was smiling, relaxed, and unaware that the cameras above were about to record the last moments she would ever appear in public view. The nightclub's surveillance system caught her leaving around 3 a.m. The footage is not dramatic in the way of movies. It's simple, almost too normal. Cian walks toward the door, glances around, and steps into the night. That small, unremarkable act has been frozen in time. The strange weight of the video is that it captures her crossing the invisible line between a safe, ordinary evening and a mystery that would haunt the town for years. When you watch the clip, it feels like the first page of a horror story. There's no monster on screen, no sudden scare, no loud moment to warn you. Instead, the unease creeps in because you know what happens after. We expect cameras to offer safety, to be silent witnesses that lead to answers. But here, the lens sees only a woman leaving a club, then loses her to the shadows of empty streets. People later spoke about how ordinary the footage looked. That is what makes it so chilling. You want the camera to show more, to reveal the direction she took or the person she might have met. But the camera's eye is blind beyond its frame. The unanswered space outside the lens is where the fear lives. The footage spread across media, making viewers lean forward and replay every second. Some paused it, studied her stride, her glance, her pace. Each small detail became a clue that seemed heavy with meaning, yet in truth, there is nothing unusual about how she looks, and that ordinariness is the very reason the clip is unforgettable. Cian steps out into the street. She disappears from the glow of neon signs, and the camera, meant to protect, could only watch. The feeling it leaves behind is a reminder that the scariest things are not jump scares or monsters, but the moments when the everyday world shifts into something we cannot explain. Chapter 14. Lauren Spearer. The footage begins with Lauren leaving a local bar. She is not alone at first. Friends and acquaintances weave in and out of her path, some walking with her, some parting ways as the hours stretch closer to dawn. The clips are disjointed, each one showing her for a brief moment before losing her again to the night. One camera captures her walking unsteadily down a sidewalk. Another shows her passing through a street corner lit by a hazy glow. The fragments piece together a story, but not a complete one. When people watch the sequence now, it feels like trying to trace the steps of a ghost. You see her figure moving from one point to the next, never realizing that these images are the last of her ever recorded. The city itself seems indifferent in the background. Cars pass, streetlights flicker, everything around her looks painfully ordinary, which only makes the mystery more haunting. The unsettling part is how familiar the scenes are. Anyone who has walked home late at night, weaving through quiet streets after a night out, can picture themselves in her place. That relatability turns the footage into something chilling. You know she is about to vanish, and yet the cameras show no obvious danger. They only show a young woman trying to get home. Each clip feels like a breadcrumb, but the trail abruptly ends. There is no camera that captures what happened after she turned the final corner. That gap in the footage is where imagination takes over. People speculate endlessly about what could have happened in the minutes after the film stopped rolling. The horror comes not from what we see, but from what we don't. Lauren's last images remain online, replayed by strangers, analyzed by investigators, and remembered by her community. The unanswered questions weigh on every frame. The camera records her walking into darkness, and then the silence takes over. It is a reminder that the scariest stories captured on CCTV are not the ones that reveal everything, but the ones that leave us staring into the unknown. Chapter 13. Libby Squire. Hull is a city shaped by its rivers, bridges, and narrow winding roads. On a winter night, those streets carried the steps of a young woman named Libby Squire. Her evening had started with friends, the kind of gathering filled with noise, laughter, and the comfortable haze of a night out. But the city also had its silent watchers. CCTV cameras tucked along streets, near shops, and across traffic lights. Those mechanical eyes would be the last to witness her movements. The footage shows Libby walking along Beverly Road, one of Hull's main arteries. At first glance, nothing about the images appears strange. She moves down the pavement, shifting her weight against the cold night air. Cars pass by, headlights cutting through the dark. Each clip looks like an ordinary slice of life, the kind of scene anyone could stumble into after leaving a pub or a friend's house. Yet, knowing what followed, the normalcy is what freezes viewers. What makes this sequence haunting is the way the cameras seem to lose her. One captures her here, another there, but none follow her beyond their frame. The city itself becomes a maze of gaps where the truth hides. The spaces between cameras feel larger than the streets themselves. She is present one moment, gone the next, like water slipping through cracks. When you watch the footage, you can't help but lean closer, as though the answer might be hiding in her stride or in the faint shadows stretching across the sidewalk. Every flicker of movement feels like it might reveal more than it actually does, and that's where the unease settles in. The images show you just enough to pull you into the story, but not enough to bring any real clarity. For Hull, Libby's disappearance became a point of reflection. People began to see their streets differently, understanding that the everyday can tilt into mystery without warning. The CCTV gave no violent spectacle, no clear confrontation. It offered something quieter and more terrifying, an ordinary walk into the night, with no return. Libby's final moments on camera stand as another reminder that CCTV is not a shield, only a witness. It watches, records, and then turns away, leaving questions to echo in the silence. The horror of her story is not in what the camera captured, but in what it failed to see. And that gap, that missing piece, is where the fear lives on. Chapter 12. Ying Ying Zhang. Some stories begin with a single frame of video, and for Ying Ying Zhang, that frame was at a bus stop on the edge of campus. The camera angle is ordinary, a fixed shot of pavement, traffic, and the slow rhythm of a summer day. Yet within that frame unfolds one of the most unsettling disappearances in recent memory. Ying Ying appears waiting patiently, the kind of figure you would overlook if you were walking past. She shifts her weight, adjusts her bag, and looks down the road. To anyone who has ever missed a bus, the image feels painfully familiar. The world around her continues, cars passing and shadows stretching across the sidewalk. Then, a black car eases into view. The driver pauses, and for a moment the camera captures a silent exchange. Ying Ying steps forward, opens the door, and climbs inside. The car rolls away, and the frame is left with nothing but an empty street. The power of this footage lies in its simplicity. No dramatic gestures, no chase, no sign of conflict. Just a decision that, at the time, looked normal. That is why the clip unsettles so deeply. It shows how fragile the line between safety and disappearance can be. When people watch the footage today, they often study the small details. Was there hesitation as she approached the car? Did she seem to recognize the driver? Did the pause mean anything more than casual conversation? The truth is that the video does not answer these questions. It freezes a moment that feels too ordinary to be final, yet it is the last anyone saw of her. What makes it haunting is not what happens inside the frame, but what happens outside of it. The camera records her entering the vehicle, but it cannot follow where it goes. Beyond the lens, the story continues in silence, leaving viewers to imagine the rest. Ying Ying's final recorded steps show the limits of surveillance. Cameras can preserve a sliver of time, but they cannot explain what it means. They are silent witnesses, unable to prevent, unable to warn. Watching her walk into that car is like watching the last note of a song cut off mid-melody. It lingers in the mind long after the screen fades to black. Chapter 11. Corey McKeague. The town of Bury St. Edmunds is known for its quiet streets, old architecture, and a nightlife that usually settles down without incident. On one early morning, however, those same streets became the setting for a mystery that still unsettles people. At the heart of it all is a set of CCTV clips that captured the final steps of Corey McKeague. Corey had been out for the night, like countless others enjoying drinks and conversation. Cameras around the town center traced parts of his journey. One shows him moving down the high street, appearing relaxed, his steps casual but steady. Another camera tracks him turning into a service area behind a row of shops. The images aren't dramatic. They are the routine recordings of someone finishing a night out. And yet, these ordinary frames hold the last proof of his presence. The most haunting part of the footage is how it ends. Corey is seen entering the service area, but no camera ever shows him leaving. The space is surrounded by blind spots, corners the lenses cannot cover. That small gap, a matter of a few meters, creates the entire mystery. He steps into shadow, and the record goes silent. It is like a stage light dimming on an actor who never returns for the next scene. For investigators, the footage became both a guide and a trap. It charted his movements so clearly until the very moment it failed. People replayed the clips over and over, hoping for a clue in his stride, in the angle of his shoulders, in the way he turned his head. But no hidden detail emerges. The answers remain locked outside the edges of the frame. What chills viewers most is the contrast between the ordinary and the unknown. Corey doesn't appear frightened or hurried. He looks like a man simply walking into a side area, maybe to rest, maybe to find a quieter route. But then he never comes back. The footage is silent proof that a person can vanish, not in the middle of nowhere, but in the heart of a town, surrounded by cameras, lights, and people. CCTV is designed to protect, to reassure, to act as a safety net, yet in this case it offered only a riddle. Corey McKeague's final images are haunting not because of what they show, but because of what they don't. They remind us that even in a world full of surveillance, the darkest mysteries still find space to hide. Chapter 10. Emma Filipoff. A convenience store camera doesn't usually hold secrets. It records the ordinary. People buying snacks, paying for gas, checking their phones before heading out again. But on one November night, the camera inside a 7-Eleven in Victoria captured the final known images of Emma Filipoff, and that ordinary frame became something far more haunting. The clip shows her barefoot, stepping inside quietly as if she were trying to ground herself. She moves slowly through the aisles, buying a prepaid phone before walking back outside. Nothing about her actions looks alarming at first, but when you learn this was the last confirmed sighting of her, the footage shifts. Every glance, every step, takes on a chilling weight. It feels like watching someone drift just beyond reach. Emma's story unsettles because of its quietness. She isn't caught running or calling for help. Instead, the cameras capture her calm exterior, an exterior that may have been hiding deep uncertainty. For the people who replay the video now, the haunting part is that she seems both present and distant at the same time. You want to read her thoughts through her body language, but the video offers no answers. Later that evening, other cameras across Victoria spotted her moving through the city. Each clip added another fragment to her final hours, but never the full picture. Surveillance gave pieces of a puzzle that, when put together, still left a hole in the middle. That gap is where fear takes root, the knowledge that someone could walk through familiar streets, recorded at different stops, and still vanish as though swallowed by the night. People often talk about the contrast in her story. The streets were alive with everyday movement, cars passing, businesses lit, people nearby. Yet Emma faded away, as if the world simply forgot to hold on to her. The footage of her barefoot in the 7-Eleven is the kind that stays burned into memory because of its ordinariness. It looks like something you might witness every day, except this time it was the last time. CCTV is not dramatic here. There are no sudden cuts or shocking images. Instead, It gives a slow, steady look at a young woman whose story ends in mystery. Watching Emma step out of the store is like watching someone walk off the edge of a map. Beyond that door, the cameras lose her, and with her, the answers vanish too. Chapter 9. Rebecca Coriam. Life on a cruise ship is supposed to feel like an endless vacation. The halls echo with laughter, the decks are full of music, and every day promises something new. But hidden among all that brightness, one of the most unsettling CCTV clips ever taken at sea captured the final known moments of a young crew member named Rebecca Coriam. The ship's cameras recorded her in the crew lounge, talking on a phone. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary conversation. She is standing near the counter, one hand on her face, her expression shifting as though she is troubled. It's a quiet scene, the kind you wouldn't give a second thought to if you passed by in real life. But when you realize this is the last time she was ever seen, the clip takes on a chilling weight. The silence in that small room feels like it's pressing in from every corner. What unsettles viewers most is the normalcy. Rebecca doesn't appear frantic, nor does she give away what might happen next. The video simply shows her hanging up the phone and walking out of frame. That's it. Just a few minutes of footage that becomes the final record of her life. Cameras followed countless passengers that day, catching people laughing, eating, or exploring. Yet when it came to Rebecca, the lens gave only a small glimpse before her story ended in shadow. On a ship as massive as the Disney Wonder, filled with thousands of people, the idea that someone could disappear without explanation feels impossible, and yet the footage proves it can happen. The sea itself adds to the eeriness. Once she steps out of frame, the vast ocean becomes a silent accomplice, holding answers that have never been found. The mystery is not in what the camera shows, but in the void it leaves behind. Investigators and her family have replayed the tape countless times. They search her face, hoping to find meaning in her expression, in the way her hand presses against her mouth. Was she upset? Was she thinking through a decision? The camera never explains, it only records, then stops. Rebecca's final appearance on CCTV reminds us how fragile our stories can be. Surrounded by people, surrounded by technology, she was still able to vanish without trace. Watching her last moments feels less like viewing security footage and more like watching a door close, leaving only questions behind. Chapter 8. Heather Elvis. Roads at night often feel endless. They stretch into the dark, guided only by headlights and the faint glow of street lamps. For Heather Elvis, the last known images of her came from traffic and business cameras along those roads. And together they formed a story that still chills anyone who sees it. The footage begins with her car moving through Myrtle Beach. It's nothing dramatic at first, just a vehicle gliding down familiar routes, pausing at lights and merging onto quieter stretches. But when you learn this is the last confirmed sighting of her, the ordinary scene transforms. Every turn of the wheel feels heavier. Every shadow cast across the road seems to whisper of the unknown waiting just beyond the lens. The chilling part of the footage is its routine. Cars pass, signals change, the world moves like it always does. Heather's car blends into that flow until the camera loses it. There is no crash, no sudden stop, no alarm. Just a vehicle moving through the frame, then vanishing into the night as though the road itself swallowed it whole. Investigators studied the clips carefully, hoping for something more. They replayed the moments when her car slowed, when it turned toward a quiet riverside area, when its headlights cut across the empty pavement, but the footage gave no deeper answers. Cameras could only watch, not explain. For viewers, the sense of dread builds because it feels so close to the experiences we all know. Late-night drives where the road seems to stretch forever, where darkness feels like it has no end. What lingers in memory is how normal it all looks. That ordinariness makes the footage terrifying because it blurs the line between everyday routine and unexplainable mystery. She was simply driving, as millions do every day, and then her path stopped without clarity. The blind spots left by the cameras became the place where the story froze. When you picture Heather's final drive, the horror doesn't come from flashing alarms or dramatic events on screen. It comes from silence. A car moving through familiar roads caught by cameras that recorded only part of the journey. Once those headlights faded out of sight, the rest of the story slipped into darkness, leaving the footage as a haunting reminder of how quickly the familiar can turn into the unanswerable. Chapter 7. Claudia Lawrence. Mornings are supposed to bring routine, coffee brewing, streets waking up, and people heading to work. For Claudia Lawrence, one ordinary morning was the last time she was ever captured on camera. Those few images, taken in York, would become the fragile threads of a mystery that has refused to fade. The CCTV shows Claudia walking along her familiar route. She looks like anyone else making their way to work, steady in her pace, her figure moving calmly through the early light. There is no rush in her steps, no sign of distress, only the small movements of someone heading toward another day. The footage feels so ordinary that it could belong to thousands of others. And yet, it is the final trace of her life caught on film. When viewers watch these clips today, what strikes them is how peaceful it all seems. The sidewalks are quiet, the air still carries that morning calm, and Claudia blends into the routine of the day. But the unease comes when you realize that this brief moment is all the world would see of her again. After those frames, she was gone. The footage stops, but the questions begin. Investigators and her community replayed those images countless times. Each angle was studied, each step measured, as though the answer might be hidden in her stride. Was she meeting someone? Was she thinking of her workday ahead? The camera gives no answers. It shows her walking and then leaves the rest to silence. That silence is the gap where fear grows, because it leaves the imagination to fill in what reality never explained. The power of this footage lies in its ordinariness. Claudia doesn't vanish in a dramatic way. She doesn't appear to sense danger. She is simply walking along the road, a figure among many, captured by a lens that could not predict what would follow. The haunting part is how quickly normal life can dissolve, even in a setting as familiar as your daily commute. For York, her disappearance marked a turning point. It reminded everyone that even in safe, bustling towns, people can vanish into spaces the cameras do not reach. Claudia's last images remind us that surveillance can record, but it cannot prevent, and once the frame goes dark, the story drifts into the unknown. Chapter 6. Phoebe Handsjuk. An apartment building in Melbourne was fitted with cameras like so many others in modern cities. Most of the time they recorded routine comings and goings, tenants carrying groceries, visitors waiting by elevators, neighbors greeting each other in passing. But one evening, those cameras caught the final known steps of Phoebe Handsjuk, and what they showed has left viewers unsettled ever since. The footage shows her entering the lobby. She appears calm, her stride steady, as though she was simply returning home or preparing to step out again. The image is sharp, clear, and strangely unremarkable. Nothing in her posture suggests fear or urgency, and yet the knowledge of what happened later casts a heavy shadow over those ordinary frames. What you see is not a woman rushing or distressed, but someone who would soon be lost to circumstances that remain hauntingly unclear. The unsettling part about this footage is that it is so ordinary. You expect CCTV tied to a mystery to reveal something strange, a suspicious figure lurking, or a gesture that hints at what's coming. But Phoebe looks like anyone else, captured mid-step by a lens that does not know it is recording a last appearance. The chill creeps in not from what is on screen, but from what the screen cannot tell us. Investigators studied the building cameras frame by frame, hoping for a sign. They looked for unusual interactions, or someone following, or even a detail in her clothing that might mean something more. But the footage refused to give answers. It remained locked in silence, offering only the quiet sight of Phoebe stepping into view and then fading beyond the edges of the lens. What frightens viewers most about this recording is the feeling of invisibility that lingers afterward. In a place filled with lights, elevators, neighbors, and cameras, someone could still vanish in plain sight. That contrast between being visible one moment and absent the next gives the story its weight. It makes you wonder how many times you've walked through a lobby, recorded without thought, never realizing how final those images could one day become. Phoebe's final moments on CCTV serve as a reminder of the limits of surveillance. Cameras can record presence, but they cannot capture what lies just beyond the frame. Watching her last walk through that lobby feels like watching someone cross a line that the world cannot follow, leaving only questions in her place. Chapter 5. Maura Murray. It began not with a street corner or lobby camera, but with the quiet, watchful eye of an ATM. A young woman named Maura Murray appeared on the screen, standing in front of the machine as she withdrew cash. The clip lasts only a moment, yet it has become one of the last confirmed images of her. In that small piece of film, she looks like anyone preparing for an ordinary trip, but what followed turned her into one of the most discussed missing person cases in America. The ATM footage shows her focused, entering her information, collecting money, and moving away. There is no sign of distress, no indication that she knows this will be one of her last appearances on camera. Shortly after, another camera at a store captures her making a purchase. These fragments don't give us much, but they anchor the timeline, placing her in familiar spaces before she set out on a drive that ended in mystery. What makes this footage so haunting is how normal it all feels. A person using an ATM, a person buying supplies. There is nothing unusual about these acts. Yet when replayed today, they carry a heavy sense of finality. The ordinary suddenly feels loaded, as though each movement should carry hidden meaning. People freeze the video, searching her face, hoping to find a clue in her expression. But the camera doesn't reveal her thoughts. It only captures the surface of an ordinary errand. Later, Maura drove north toward the White Mountains. That drive ended in a car accident along a rural road, a scene that has been studied endlessly. But those final moments recorded by the ATM and store cameras remain the true haunting element. They are the last time the world saw her in a familiar setting, surrounded by the routines of everyday life. After that, her story slipped into a place no camera could follow. What unsettles viewers most is how easy it is to imagine themselves in her place. Who hasn't used an ATM late at night or stopped at a store before heading out on a trip? The very ordinariness of the footage is what makes it frightening. It's a reminder that the most chilling stories don't always begin with something unusual. Sometimes they begin with something painfully normal. In Maura's case, the cameras didn't record a mystery unfolding. They recorded normal life right before the mystery began. And that is why these clips remain unforgettable. Chapter 4. Relisha Rudd. Hotel lobbies often feel like places of safety, with bright lights, wide hallways, and cameras covering nearly every corner. But sometimes those same cameras end up recording something that feels more unsettling than safe. For Relisha Rudd, the last known images of her came from a hotel camera, and those frames have remained at the heart of a story that still leaves people uneasy. The footage shows Relisha walking alongside a man who was not part of her family. She looks small beside him, her steps matching his as they move down the hall. To an outside viewer, it might look like an ordinary scene, an adult and a child walking together. But when you know the background, when you know that this was the last time she was ever recorded on camera, the video becomes chilling. The bright lights of the hotel do nothing to ease the sense of dread that grows with every replay. What unsettles people most about this clip is how ordinary it appears at first glance. There is no struggle, no sudden gesture of alarm. The camera captures calm movements, and that calmness is what makes it so haunting. Viewers often find themselves studying the small details, the tilt of her head, the way her hands hang at her side, the angle of their pace. But the footage gives no answers. It is simply a silent record of a moment that now feels loaded with meaning. For investigators, the hotel video became the last solid point on the timeline. Everything after is speculation, and that gap has allowed fear and uncertainty to take over. The video doesn't explain where they went next, nor does it reveal what happened when they stepped beyond the frame. It just ends, leaving the imagination to fill in the silence. The chilling reminder here is how fragile safety can feel. Hotels are meant to be public spaces where people can rest and feel secure. Cameras are meant to protect, to act as witnesses that keep danger away. But in this case, the camera's gaze only gave us a glimpse, not an explanation. It provided proof that Relisha was there, but not the clarity of what happened after. Her story is one of the starkest examples of how CCTV can both help and fail at the same time. It preserved the final images of her life in the public record, but beyond that frame, it left only questions and unease. Chapter 3. Jason Jolkowski. Sometimes the most haunting footage doesn't come from a crowded city or a busy hotel. Instead, it can appear in the quiet setting of a suburban neighborhood, where the streets are calm and the rhythm of life feels predictable. That's where a neighbor's security camera captured the last known images of Jason Jolkowski. On that morning, Jason was walking toward a local high school. He was supposed to meet a co-worker there for a ride to his job. The camera caught him stepping out of his driveway, dressed casually, carrying nothing unusual. His stride was steady, unhurried, exactly what you'd expect from someone making their way to a simple meeting. The lens follows him for only a few steps before he disappears out of frame. That brief clip is all the world has left of him. What chills viewers about this video is the total normalcy. Jason doesn't look worried or distracted. He isn't glancing around as if he senses something nearby. He simply walks down the street, and then the footage ends. The ordinary nature of that moment is what makes it terrifying, because you know the story that follows is anything but ordinary. Investigators leaned heavily on this camera clip when building the timeline. They confirmed he never reached the high school, never made contact with his ride, and never returned home. Yet the recording offers no clues beyond the obvious. A young man walking down the street, as he had done countless times before. The absence of anything unusual leaves the mind to wander, filling in the gaps with darker possibilities. For the people who watch the footage today, it feels almost like a trick. The camera gives you a beginning, but no middle and no end. You see Jason step confidently into the day, but the story stops there, leaving a blank space where the rest of his path should be. That emptiness is more disturbing than any dramatic scene could ever be. The haunting power of Jason's final images lies in what they do not show. A safe neighborhood, a familiar routine, and the steady steps of someone on his way to work. None of these details suggest danger, and yet he vanished. The footage reminds us that cameras can record proof of presence, but they cannot always explain disappearance. Once Jason leaves that frame, the silence of the unknown takes over. Chapter 2. Joey Lynn Offit. A grocery store checkout line may be one of the least remarkable places to appear on camera. People shuffle forward, buy their food and leave, all under the quiet observation of security lenses. Yet for Joey Lynn Offit, her appearance in such a setting would become the last confirmed record of her life. The store cameras, designed only to monitor routine shopping trips, ended up documenting the final images of a mystery that remains unsolved. The footage shows Joey moving through the store with quiet purpose. She collects her items, waits her turn, and makes her purchase. To any casual observer, nothing seems out of place. She doesn't rush, doesn't pause, and doesn't interact in a way that would catch attention. She is just another customer among many, a brief presence in a long stream of faces and movements. Yet once she steps out of frame, the store never sees her again. What makes this recording so unsettling is how plain it looks. When you imagine the last sighting of someone, you expect something more dramatic. A strange figure nearby, a moment of hesitation, some sign that something is wrong. Instead, Joey appears calm, carrying grocery bags like anyone preparing to return home. The ordinary nature of the clip is what turns it chilling. You know what follows is anything but ordinary, but the footage refuses to foreshadow it. Later, her home would become the center of an unexplained event, leaving behind more questions than answers. Yet those who revisit the store video keep returning to the same truth. The final glimpse of Joey is striking in its normalcy. A woman shopping, completing a routine errand, unaware that these would be her last steps recorded in public view. Viewers often search her face for meaning. Was she distracted? Did her expression hide worry? The camera does not reveal more than what it captures in plain sight. It provides no secret, no hidden code to explain her fate. It is this gap between what the video shows and what we wish it would reveal that unsettles people most. Joey's last images on CCTV remind us that mysteries do not always come wrapped in flashing alarms or obvious warnings. Sometimes they hide inside the simplest of moments, the kind we barely notice in our own lives. Watching her final checkout feels haunting because it looks like something we've all done countless times. Yet for her, it became the last record of a story that never found its ending. Chapter 1. Brandon Lawson. Gas stations are the kind of places people barely remember passing through. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead, cameras keep watch from corners, and customers come and go at all hours of the night. For Brandon Lawson, one of those cameras caught him during what appeared to be an ordinary stop. That small piece of footage would later stand as the final confirmed image of a man whose story remains one of the most unsettling mysteries from rural Texas. The clip is simple. Brandon can be seen fueling his vehicle, moving with the casual rhythm of someone who has done it countless times before. He looks like any other driver preparing for the long road ahead. There are no dramatic gestures, no unusual movements, nothing to suggest that this routine stop would become so significant. Then, as quickly as the camera captures him, he finishes and drives off into the darkness. The gas station lights fade behind him, and the footage ends. What makes this haunting is not what the video shows, but what follows after. Brandon was heading down a highway surrounded by open land, the kind of landscape where shadows stretch endlessly and silence feels heavy. Hours later, he would be remembered for a strange phone call, but the gas station footage is the last clear sight of him in everyday life. That divide between the normal clip and the mystery that followed creates a chilling contrast. When people watch the recording today, they often search for meaning in his movements. Was there hesitation as he glanced around? Did his posture reveal something beneath the surface? Yet the tape offers no clues. It shows only a man on a late-night stop, unaware that the camera's eye would preserve his last ordinary act. The fear here doesn't come from anything dramatic. It comes from how relatable the moment is. Who hasn't pulled into a gas station late at night, standing under buzzing lights while the world outside feels vast and empty? That sense of routine makes Brandon's story cut deeper. The footage looks familiar, yet its weight comes from what we know is missing afterward. The final images of Brandon Lawson remind us that sometimes the scariest mysteries don't unfold in hidden alleys or abandoned places. They happen in the middle of the ordinary, where cameras capture just enough to prove someone was there, but not enough to explain where they went. Once he drove away into the Texas night, the camera could only fall silent.